Naraka is growing, all the way up to 15 characters now. Some of them aren't immediately accessible because you have to buy them with in-game currency, and while it doesn't really take all that long to save up enough Tei, if you're unfamiliar with the roster, you might want some advice on who to buy first, or even who to start learning from the free characters. I think this video I made on the best character abilities is actually a pretty good who to main guide as well, since understanding the abilities is what you can base your choice off of. I definitely recommend checking that one out after you have an idea of who you want to main. So for this video, I want to focus a bit more on preference and playstyle rather than what's good and what's bad. I'm going to go down the list from top to bottom and talk through what I think makes each of them fun and why someone might choose to main them. My first bit of advice would be to just play whoever you think looks cool, but if you want a little bit more information, that's what this is for. I also made a super short quiz that gives you a % match with each of the heroes. It's literally just 3 questions, so it's rough at best, but if you do take it, definitely keep your top 3 or so matches in mind while you watch. This is obviously geared towards new players, since I'll be giving very brief introductions to each of the characters, but if you're a veteran, let me know down below how you chose your main. Starting with Viper Ning, she can be described as a disabler, with playing her revolving around taking control of the fight from the start and limiting your opponent's countermeasures. If you play her right, she can actually be really oppressive and difficult to deal with, but at the same time, she's just difficult to play in her own sense, so I don't really recommend her for beginners. Once you have a good idea of all the other characters' abilities, you'll be able to understand how to use her silence skill at the optimal time and put in the most work while it's in effect. If you truly want to be a Viper main, you're probably a bit more of a trios player where she's really strong, rather than solos where she's certainly not meta, but more than playable. If you find yourself using your ult or skill as a panic button, Viper might not be for you because she really does rely on your ability to win neutral and finish off a fight. Because of that, she's a pretty difficult character, but I think she's really fun, and it's just satisfying controlling a fight the way Viper does. Moving on to Temulch, he's actually my own main, and by far the character I have the most hours with. He's super versatile, although usually considered a bit better in team modes than he is in solo. Despite that, I almost exclusively play solos. Even his abilities themselves are versatile, with you being able to use them defensively and offensively. He's a great first hero to learn because he can be played effectively in all modes, and that means you don't have to learn multiple characters early on. He's a master of the sands, with his abilities based on crowd control. That CC comes from landing these Zephyr Wisps that lock down an opponent for 3 seconds, allowing you some burst damage through a focus attack, easy setup for a combo, or a bunch of free range shots. One of the things that makes some characters easier than others is whether or not they have a combo breaking skill, aka one that can be used under attack. A combo breaker lets you make a mistake and not get fully punished for it. All Temmie's skills can be used under attack, so he's fairly beginner friendly. In my opinion, he's super underrated, and we don't see nearly as many Temmies in solo as we should. Now for Matari, this is your stealthy mobility type character. Until recently, none of her abilities could be used under attack, but her S3 got buffed to where the secondary teleport can. That means you do have to use the first teleport in advance, and if you don't port again within 9 seconds, no combo breaker for you. I'd say she's more on the difficult side because she doesn't have that instant access to it, except for with her ultimate. When you ult, you turn invisible and gain access to a backstab as long as the opponent's in line of sight, which can be really powerful if you know what you're doing. It's a great finishing tool since those backstabs are difficult to avoid, but if you want to make full use of her, hopping into the training arena and working on using them to extend combos rather than start them is your best bet. That's definitely a challenge if you're brand new, but you can still use her sort of non-optimally and still have fun. I think she's a decent first hero to learn since she kind of forces you to learn good movement to make use of the space her teleports get you. If you want to feel like a nimble, stealthy assassin while playing a character with a pretty high skill ceiling, Matari might be for you. Tarka is a super aggressive hero that uses fire in all his skills, either straight up throwing a fireball or triggering a burning counterpunch. People don't really play him for his skills though. Where Tarka shines is with his ultimate. It gives you unmatched speed and mobility that lets you do crazy things like the infamous Tarka Infinite. He doesn't really fit into many meta team comps, so he's for sure more of a solos character, but that doesn't mean he can't work fine in a duo. New players typically just end up using his ultimate to run away, which isn't really ideal, and for that reason you probably want a decent understanding of the game before trying to master how to use his ultimate, but I do think practicing his infinite in free training is actually a pretty good way to get used to the input speed that a lot of combos require. If you always lean towards the fire wielding characters in games, then definitely try him out, but I don't necessarily recommend him as your first main. Tianhai can turn into this giant creature with his ultimate, so for some people that's an instant draw, but he's pretty polarizing, mainly for the reason that he's incredible in trios, and pretty useless in solos. I'm actually going to group Yueshan into this segment too, since he's similar in the way that he's a transformer, great in team modes, bad in solos. If they just really appeal to you, then don't let that completely stop you from trying them out in solos, but I can't recommend it. There's not too much to say about these guys. If the transformation aspect is cool to you and you love playing trios, then I can't recommend either of them enough. Yueshan's ult is the more mobile one with a unique melee moveset, whereas Tianhai's bread and butter is a ranged grab and smash. If you really like coordinating with your teammates to set up grabs and even hold opponents for your team to shoot them, then I'd lean towards Tianhai, but if you want to work at least a little bit more independently, then I'd go Yueshan. Yoto is the only character that you can't customize outside the skin, so if you're the type to spend an hour tinkering with sliders, maybe pick someone else, but her abilities are actually really fun. If you're a brand new player though, Yoto might actually be my #1 recommendation since she's versatile, you don't have to swap depending on what game mode you play, and using her abilities effectively is pretty straightforward. S3 summons a spinning blade that can be used under attack to cover a mistake, and let you get off a heal. Her ultimate, while sometimes easy to counter, can turn the tide of a fight in your favor if you're careful releasing her blades. She's not really incredible at any one thing, but she's well balanced, and if you like the idea of summoning a huge spirit greatsword and dealing a lot of damage, for sure try her out. Kurumi is the true healer of Naraka, and she's great support in team modes. Unfortunately, she's significantly worse in solos, a big part of that being she doesn't have a combo breaker. Her ultimate spawns a healing zone under your feet, and her skills allow you to summon an umbrella that you can teleport to for some knockback, or use for some healing. If you're the person who plays Mercy in Overwatch, there's a good chance you'll like Kurumi. To me, it's a pretty simple decision. If you like being the healer in team modes, then absolutely pick her up. And if you're a glutton for punishment in solos, then you can take on that challenge too. Valda is basically a waterbender who in effect is a CC hero. I think Valda is actually the least likely character to get a top match with you on my quiz, since she's sort of mediocre at a lot of things, but I don't want to discourage anyone too much from playing her since she can be a lot of fun. Her U3 that allows her to throw many water spears can be really potent in trios from what I've heard, but it's still pretty hard to fit her into a meta team comp. In solos, her wave ult can be a pretty powerful finishing tool, as well as a hard counter to Tarka ult, but outside of that, there's not a lot of use cases. She's on the more difficult end for sure, for the reason that if you want to counter a Tarka ult for example, first you have to be good enough to force them to ult first. Her bubble skills, while tricky to set up, allow for some nasty combos with TOD potential, and I think it makes her a sort of lose hard or win big sort of character. If you want to be that waterbender, then don't be too discouraged, but just know you'll have to put in the practice. Takeda has a great skill set that makes him potent in any mode. To me, he's one of the coolest characters with his demonic theme. Sort of like Matari, I want to say you can be decent with just a basic understanding, but if you really want to get good, then there is quite a skill ceiling when it comes to Takeda's ultimate. While in ult, you can launch demonic strikes, either to set up a free hit, extend a combo, or save yourself from incoming damage. I don't think he's a super common pick for trios, but he's an insanely good 1v1er, which makes him a menace in Realm of Yang. The only reason I'd say he's not a great first main is because he doesn't have that combo breaking skill, but other than that, he's pretty easy to recommend if you have an aggressive playstyle and enjoy that demonic aesthetic.
Justina is the obligatory ice character with all of her abilities focused on freezing either yourself or the opponent. She can sort of be considered a sustain character because her S1 heals your shield, which helps outlast the enemy, especially if you're low on consumable heals. Other than that, her skill is just a combo breaker, which of course is really useful for covering a mistake. Her ultimate is honestly one of the most skillful. This sentence doesn't make sense. I'm changing this sentence because it doesn't make sense. Her ultimate is honestly one of the most skillful, which can very easily go to waste if you're not careful. If you're brand new, you'll probably find yourself sticking to U1 and just using it as an escape tool, which admittedly is effective for getting a reset, but to play it aggressively, you need to make split-second decisions and time your freeze dashes precisely. If you're charging a focus attack, you can't be frozen by U1, which is the most common one, so learning how to set up freezes is key. Her strongest mode is probably solos, but if you're coordinating with teammates to heavily punish frozen opponents, she can be great there too.
Wuchen, like Justina, is pretty difficult, definitely one of the characters with the highest skill floor. If you don't really know how to use him, it can be hard to see the value he brings. At the very least though, all his skills are combo breakers, which is easy enough to understand, but getting good at using the spirit blades definitely takes some time. Making use of his ultimates can be difficult if you're new, with U1 and 3 working out to basically just be reset tools, and U2 being more of a finisher or a counter ult. All of them open portals, not really something that does a lot of heavy lifting because you really have to lean on your mechanics to be able to take advantage of them, besides U1, which is literally just for escaping. It sounds like I'm saying don't play him, but I actually think he's super fun. I love his skins, and his abilities are really flashy and unique. He's a sustain and support character that's great in every mode, so if you like the sound of that, then definitely consider him. Zipping is all about outlasting your opponents with some really strong sustain abilities. If you're more of a trios player and want a pure healing support character for your team, then I'd definitely say go Kurumi, but if you're not as into team modes and want sort of a semi-healer, then Zipping could be for you. Relative to the other characters, she's really quite easy to learn, since her U1 is basically a set and forget ability, and S2 helps you get out of a lot of sticky situations with the immunity to light attack stagger. That skill in particular makes her very good in solos for running away and draining your opponent's grapples and resources. She's definitely not for anyone that wants to play super aggressively, but that sustained playstyle does have its appeal. Feria is a bit of a mechanical mastermind, bringing some steampunk into Naraka. That's going to be a cool thing for a lot of people, and an immediate deal breaker for probably just as many. That mech of hers she summons with her ultimate is really strong, and that goes for all modes. In solos, it sort of turns out to be a bit of a glorified reset button, since it's very easy to run away from once you see her summon it, giving both players time to top off their health, since Feria can heal while in her mech. In team modes, you can take full advantage of the mech to protect your teammates and cover them while they try to heal, or even let them pilot your mech with U3. U3 can also be used as a combo extender or a starter, and when paired with S2 that is also a combo tool, she has some crazy aggressive potential. She's pretty easy to pick up while also having a really high skill ceiling, she's great in all modes, just really easy to recommend. Akos is the newest character as of May 2023, summoning the power of a spirit tiger for his pretty potent abilities. His skills all have some level of stagger, giving you the potential for some really high damaging combos with S2, which can shine in solos where you actually have the 1v1 to use them. S3 and U3 set him up to be great for team modes as well, packing insane zoning potential with the ult, and a long period of AoE stagger with the skill. When you ult, you unlock a special moveset with instant access to hyper armor, enhanced scale rushes, and more. Or in the case of U3, you spawn a ring that knocks back opponents when they try to leave, with some additional benefits too. He's not particularly difficult to play at surface level, but there's plenty to master with combo extensions and the subtleties of his ults. I'd place him in the same realm as Takeda and Tarka, being extremely aggressive, but he also has that element of zoning that can be very helpful in team modes. There we have it. Hopefully you have a much better idea of who you want to main. If you took the quiz, I'd love to hear if your results matched up with who you're settling on, and of course any and all questions and comments are more than welcome. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.